Que bueno, mi gente. Calix Boxing here. Thanks to all the new subscribers and thanks to everybody listening to this video. I truly appreciate it. Was surfing a minute ago, came across an interview, and I forgot the publication. My apologies. Bob Arum did where he said he doesn't think Floyd should get credit for his 50th victory. He should get credit for this victory against Conor McGregor to be 50 and 0. Conor McGregor is just not worthy. Yada yada yada. I understand where he's coming from on the surface. I just don't think there's much value to that argument, being that it literally is what it is. The Nevada State Athletic Commission has deemed this fight real. So it's going to go down in the history books as real. What I find more intriguing, more interesting, let me ask you guys a question, and maybe you can put this in the comments. How many of you have heard talk recently about Floyd being 50 and 0 after this fight? No wrong answer. Just how much talk have you heard about 50 and 0? I remember when Floyd came off of that win against Pacquiao, and then all you started to hear was, will Floyd fight two more times to get to 50 and 0? And it seemed to be a big deal at the time, him beating Marciano's record, and I put that in parentheses because you've seen fighters go over 49 and 0 before. They just continued to fight and eventually lost. But I guess it is a record of the guy who fought the most times and stayed undefeated. And 50 and 0, I guess, would be that record, being retired undefeated. We've seen guys get close, and Calzaghe easily could have fought four more times, cherry-picked some fighters over the last year and a half of his career and got to 50 and 0 if he wanted to, but he stopped fighting at 46 and 0. We've seen Hatton get to, I think he was 44 and 0 at one point. We saw Chocolatito get to like 46, 47 victories before he lost. Canelo had 40 something victories before he lost. So we've seen guys do it, and more about that in a minute. But I want to stay on topic here. Over the past two fights, how much talk have you heard about 50 and 0? Not much, in my opinion. Now, like I said, there's no wrong answer. So if you guys have heard otherwise in your circles, let me know. But I haven't heard too many people talking about 50 and 0. So what that tells me is the public has spoken, if this is true. Once again, I haven't heard it. No, I don't watch ESPN. I don't watch. So maybe it's there. Maybe it's there. I don't watch the fake news. But in my circles that I frequent of boxing fans and MMA fans, I haven't heard it much. So what that tells me is, in my world, that the people that I've heard from don't put much stock in Floyd's last two fights, Berto and now the bum, Conor McGregor. Because Conor McGregor in the boxing world is a bum. I mean, that's not even debatable at this point until he proves otherwise. He's a bum. He has 0 fights. I know he has some amateur experience. A lot of people have amateur boxing experience. I know he has some amateur experience. And don't get me wrong, I love Conor McGregor. I'm a fan in the octagon. I'm a fan of his, and I think he's a great mixed martial artist. In the boxing world, he's a bum. He's 0 and 0. So what that tells me is, I think sports fans are at large, they let us down, us hardcore fans down. They're so uneducated on combat sports and how this stuff works. But it's still, what this tells me is, I think they're smarter than even we think, that they haven't been talking about this much. I don't think it really matters if it goes down in the history books at 50 and 0. That's yet to be seen. A decade from now, we'll be talking, and we'll be able to step back from all this and look at Floyd's resume and put it up against other greats. We have plenty of time for that. The other aspect of this is, I think we're in an era, and I think it's in full swing now, and over the next decade, I think it's going to be a big thing. We're in the undefeated fighter era, to where a lot of guys are protecting their O. And we're going to see a lot of guys 30-something and 0, even 40-something and 0 in the next decade. in my opinion, because guys are so protective of that right hand column. They're so protective of that zero. They want to keep that zero so bad to where they become so low risk, high reward that it almost makes you want to throw up. But and it's even to the point where not even great fighters, but good fighters, just decent fighters, are 30 something and 0. Um, I named some examples of some guys who are 40 something and 0, who necessarily aren't legends. I wouldn't call Chocolatito a legend at this point. I wouldn't call Canelo a legend. Um, Calzaghe, he's going to go in the Hall of Fame. Is he an all-time legend? I don't know. Um, but it's possible, especially in this day and age in boxing, where guys can rack up early wins, fight 4 or 5 times a year early in their career, get to like 30 and 0, and then once they get on the big stage, they can start cherry picking opponents and easily get 15 straight victories over the next 6 or 7 years, fighting twice a year, and get to 45 and 0. And I think we're going to see a lot of that over the next decade, and that adds another dimension to this, to where a decade from now, when we're talking about this in 2027, Will being 50 and 0, Will Calzaghe being 46 and 0, will it be watered down at that point to where, I mean, just look at football. There was a time when Dan Marino throwing for 5,000 yards was a huge deal. Huge. It was like the Holy Grail. It's like, oh my God, this guy threw for 5,000 yards in a season? That's not even, he's an alien. Now guys are doing it every season. I think Drew Brees has done it, what, 5 or 6 straight seasons? Um, Peyton Manning has done it numerous times. Tom Brady's done it numerous times. And I think Matt Stafford has even done it or come close to it. Matt Stafford's just a decent quarterback. You see decent quarterbacks getting over 4,000 yards in a season because we're in a passing era in football. And I think today we're in an undefeated era of boxing, to where guys are so protective of that to where they're going to stay away from. I mean, just look at boxing politics today. We want to see Mikey Garcia versus Terrence Crawford because they're going to milk the hell out of that fight. We want to see Lomachenko versus Garcia. Do you think you're going to see Lomachenko versus Garcia anytime soon? They're going to milk the hell out of that fight. So guys can go 5 or 6 fights without and stay away from their other great peers in and around their weight class. Boxing fans are so patient that they'll allow them to do it. So I think the next decade or two, you're going to see a lot of undefeated fighters rack up wins methodically, and to where 50 and 0 might not even be a huge deal in 2030. I don't know. So I guess what I'm getting at is, don't focus so much on will this count in the record books and whatnot. Time will tell. Time always tells. Time will tell us when we look back in 2030, 2035. Is Floyd really as great as a lot of people thought at the time as far as resume goes? Eye test, he passed the eye test with flying colors. I mean, he's lights out incredible. Eye test, he's one of the greatest of all time. But resume has to stack up with it. You have to reach your potential, and time will tell. Time will tell. But in the short term, the fact that I'm not hearing much about this 50 and 0 thing tells me that people just aren't buying this. They'll buy the pay-per-view because they want to see a circus. People love watching a train wreck. People love watching Tyson biting Holyfield's ear. They love a train wreck, and they can smell a train wreck from a mile away in this fight. So people will buy it. They love a circus act. But people aren't buying this as a real fight. It'll go down as a real fight in the history books, but people have sniffed it out. People are smarter than that.